Hello, and welcome to this YouTube premiere. We're so happy to have you here with us. Thank you for joining. My name is Joumana El Zein Khoury, and I'm the Executive Director of World Press Photo. And I'm very honored to be here with Rena Effendi, who's the chair of the global jury of the 2022 World Press Photo Contest. Rena, do you want to tell us a bit who you are?
Thank you, Joumana. I'm Rena Effendi. I'm a documentary photographer based in Istanbul. And I'm also very happy and excited to be here and very proud to have been part of this new exciting chapter in the history of the World Press Photo Contest.
Thank you so much, Rena. Yeah, we're just actually announced now the winners, the regional winners of the 2022 World Press Photo Contest. And what we wanted to do here is to give you a bit more in-depth about who they are and the stories behind them. We couldn't have hoped for a better outcome in this first regional format, as we're very proud to have so many local photographers and women photographers in this edition. The jury, actually the global jury, was here in Amsterdam. It was quite a great experience to have them here physically, actually, to be able to see the stories and discuss them. And there were some very interesting discussions within the jury. Rena, do you want to tell us a bit more about that process?
Yes, so the new regional format had less categories, and to complicate things even further, we had to maintain this very delicate balance between representation across the various regions of the world, gender inclusion, and the importance of issues that the world has been grappling with in the past year. So these new challenges really pushed us out of our comfort zone, but at the same time, they gave us an imperative to look for stories which provided a much more nuanced vantage point. And as a result of this, the majority of the winners this year are based in the same countries where the photographs have been taken. And this was not something deliberate. This was something that the jury kind of naturally, organically gravitated towards in the process of judging, when it occurred to us that some of the more compelling stories were told by people from a personal angle and were told by those who were present on the ground and that were deeply committed to the subject.
Yeah, it was really humbling, actually, to be a fly on the wall during these discussions. It was great to be able to listen in on them and to hear all the different contexts and way of looking at things from the different jury members who are coming from all over the world. But now, without further ado, we'll actually let you be able to look at the videos that we have. The videos will be actually presenting the different winners region by region, and the jury chairs from each of these regions will be able to explain to you what the story is about and why they deserve to win. So please stay tuned, and we hope that you will be as excited and as touched and as humbled as we have been during this whole process. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the videos and be inspired, we hope.
The fact that World Press Photo decided for this year to break it down into regional models before going to the global one, that's what motivated me to participate. Because you need people from the region who live in a very specific context to highlight what are the stories that matter to us.
Having the jury members from the region in the room was absolutely invaluable because they provided the context for some of these entries that the other jury members were not familiar with.
And we needed to address this problem of getting more regional representation, and that really required the reformatting of how entrants are gathered and encouraged in the first place.
It's really important to see the localization, localized practice and knowledge, and at the other end, we are trying to see how it's globally connected.
We saw a lot of personal documentary work coming out, which was really nice to give us an intimate look at people's lives. But we also had a lot of stories that were about environmental destruction by man.
Since the beginning, I was looking for, first of all, visual quality and the topics, the relevance of the topic, like what was in the images.
Those stories are going to be told, they are going to have a space to be published in a book, to be in an exhibition also for the World Press Photo that is like a massive media of understanding for the rest of the world, no? And with this regional model, we can give a voice to each one of the continents to be represented, no?
It's about the ongoing protests in Sudan. There was a first sitting that led to the takedown of Omar el-Bashir. And then in October, there was a new military coup. And here you have a young girl alone, wearing sneakers, a blue jean, taking a gas can and throwing it back at the police. So it's about bravery, it's about feminism, it's about citizenship, it's about the youth. It's a powerful, iconic image that sends a very strong message to the youth of the African continent and to our leaders as well. The story we selected from Africa was from the get-go already in the jury for Africa, an important story that we wanted to highlight that has to do with the ongoing situation in the northeast of Nigeria, with the kidnapping of girls, people being afraid to send their children to school, and it also goes back to the kidnapping of the 200 girls, the Chibok girls, that created the movement #BringBackOurGirls. 100 girls are still missing. I think the strength of the story is the combination of the edit. It's very subtle. You have the sense of despair and isolation that the parents can feel. It's extremely respectful. What you see is these empty schools. The shoes of the girls who were just kidnapped is done with a lot of respect.
This emptiness can clearly indicate us, where we are leading our future to, and how, our work doesn't only explain the situation, but also create a certain kind of urgency between the audience to just talk about these issues.
And it was important for us, from the jury in Africa, to remind people that these kids are still missing and that we should not forget them.
It is a complicated country which had a famine, and then the zebu is very important for the communities. The stealing of the zebu from one tribe to the other tribe actually started a sort of a civil war.
And you have populations on the coast that are hit by severe weather conditions. It's a very, very challenging, specific, long-term project related to one region, but with a climate condition that could also be happening in other parts of the world.
It was selected because of the consistency of the style, the amazing visual quality, and amazing editing also of the work.
The open format project that we awarded talks about Egypt, but a very specific region in Egypt, that's the desert of Sinai. And the photographer is part of that community and is just keeping alive and sharing with us the culture and the tradition of those communities.
Yeah, it was a combination of the of images documenting what life was like and the people that she was spending time with, as well as collaborative portraits with embroidered stitches on it that was created by the girls in the image itself, so that they could take charge of how they wanted to be represented. And this combination it worked really, really well.
It's a collaboration with the community, so you really have different perspectives and different feelings, but from the inside.
So this photo shows children in Gaza, taken by a female Palestinian photographer in such a difficult time. We know about the ongoing Palestine-Israeli conflict, but what is happening to the children is really important for us, not only to see the living condition of the children, but this particular image has actually two sides. If you look at the background, is the ruins all over, and it's it's darkened. But if you come back to the foreground, you see the children are holding the candle and flags. Why is it so? Because they have come back from a demonstration. So this is one of the rare images where you see the aftermaths of the demonstration.
This photo was chosen because it captured the moment so sensitively, and the ruins that they're sitting amongst really contrast against the solidarity you feel between them.
Despite the destruction, you want to say that a way out, a positive way out, and hope is possible and might maybe happen one day. We wanted to show not the typical pictures that we've been seeing the past months, but the consequences of what happened in Afghanistan, the impact of it on the daily life of people and those who are at the forefront of defending and protecting culture.
This cinema hall in Afghanistan, where you don't see the audience, you see empty seats, and 20 employees working in the cinema hall. It's a story. Photographically, it's very poetic. It has that slowness, that muted experience of absence. And there's one single photo from the entire story where you see the owner's portrait, and she's a woman, and she is at her home and not even allowed to go to her own cinema hall. And it talks so much about this culture and how it is inseparable from conflict. So we wanted to see conflict, but we also wanted to understand, how culture is part of politics and it's in the people's movement. This tiger project is having 3 different angles. People and tiger, they coexist, and this conflict also talks about both of their dependencies on food. And the third most important angle is the forest itself. So forest is actually for them, a place to stay, but at the same time the forest is also threatened by the current condition of deforestation and many complex issues.
We loved the editing, we loved how the photographer was really close to the events and even close to the tigers. And also we appreciate the fact that it was told from, let's say, both sides in a way. There is empathy also towards the animal.
Open format is, for me, one of the most interesting categories to see how photojournalists can reinvent their strategies to tell the stories. But this particular work is based on photographs by a Japanese photographer exploring a city through his dream. So this is an intuitive work, a poetic experience sharing of a photographer where he is actually inviting us to his dream to also to see the lived experience of the people around the city. Here, all the photos are not staged. So these are the straight photos of the life around there. It's intuitive, but at the same time, you can say it's a documentary. But the narration, again, symbolizes the dream.
A single image is a standalone, so it has to tell the story in just one image. We had a lot of wildfires in Europe in 2021, and this one in particular, the fires that were in Greece last summer, were really devastating and impacting the entire region.
We can see the fire in the background. It's a very, very powerful image.
This particular work is shot in a place which is supposed to be a cold place, but if you look at the photographs, it shows you, how this temperature is totally shifting there, and not only affecting people, it's affecting the animal It's affecting the pets, affecting the children.
We had fires in Greece, and this is, let's say, more common, but we have fires also in Siberia, which is actually really scary.
This story, it was beautifully made. It was a very aesthetic, and the point of view of the photographer was clear as a statement. No? It's a really good reflection to talk about global warming related to fires in one of the coldest places in the world. So it's fire on ice. How else can we show that it's beginning to be a problem, no?
The story is about Ukraine. The photographer is addressing the daily life of the people who live in long-term conflict.
We all thought it was important, because of the current situation, to give an award to that project. That is a long-term project. So how do you connect a long-term to a specific current event that also maybe helps people to understand how did we get there?
It's not only about the war. I mean, it's the consequences of war on people in the long term. So there are moments, like intimate moments, or the post-trauma of the being in the front line, for example. I mean, it's always subtle. It's never screamed out as a work.
So it's a very intelligent project. It gives a view from both sides of the aisle, which is also very important, not to be biased.
Open format is, for me, one of the most interesting categories to see how photojournalists can reinvent their strategies to tell the stories.
The whole sequence of photographs used computer-generated technology, so all the people in the photographs were not real people. The captions were generated by AI, and the project takes place in a city that was famous for setting up fake social media profiles, which then in the end influenced the course of history, especially in America and the political history.
It's really a testimony about fake news and disinformation.
Well, this project could never be at the WordPress photo otherwise, other than at the open format, because it is actually fake images. But it's a clever way to use fake images to make us think about what a fake news is.
In this photo, we see an orange dress hanging on a cross in perfect evening light as the sun sets on the day. And it's very symbolic of the mass graves that were discovered last summer at various sites across Canada, and is a haunting image of that reckoning we're coming to with our own history.
It reveals also the role of the church and how culture of First Nation people have been violently erased. It's a global message.
It's a kind of image that sears itself into your memory. It's a kind of image that almost inspires a sensory a reaction. I could almost hear the quietness in that photograph.
I want there to be some awareness, to admit that this history exists in our past, and recognition of that terrible event. It will be the only way for us to repair, is to honor those who were taken.
First of all, I was looking for really strong images, but I was also looking for stories that went deeper into the issues that they were about.
Execution of original presentation of style.
The series was really intimate, dignified, and very caring portraits of people who work in the meatpacking district in Ohio, in America. The series portrays them really as they are, as opposed to having any visual elements that connotes them with the occupation that they are usually associated with. It really shows them as in their homes, it shows them as human beings. It doesn't show them as workers. It shows them as somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's brother. And I think for that reason, this series is really, really strong and powerful.
Long-term projects provide a space for a photographer to really delve deeper into the issues that they're trying to portray, they're trying to photograph, and stories that portrayed issues from a different perspective.
Well, for me, it was a very intelligent and very insightful way of chronicling the course of events unfolding and leading up to a terrifying and climatic resolution, which was the American insurrection of January 6th. This project, in many ways, kind of blurs the lines between the real and the imaginary, and that's the poignancy of it.
The open format category was new this year, and our winner was an entry from Mexico, and it traces the history and importance of the poppy on the indigenous community that the photographer is from. So the photographer had taken the original story, punctured holes in, backlit it, rephotographed it, toned it to amplify the narrative of the complex relationship between the poppy and the indigenous community. It's life-sustaining for them, but it's also illegal and brings a lot of violence. So that duality of experience is really captured in this additional layer.
The single that we awarded for South America talks about the evacuation of a couple from their house in Colombia. It's also a reminder that with the development of urban areas, how local population are sometimes forced to get out.
How the governments in South America are beginning to repress the people in different ways, in a violent way, no? Because this story was an eviction, and this eviction was done, according to what we can see in this picture, in a really violent way.
You can see the insane balance between people and power.
We chose a story about a girl who vowed to cut her hair only when the schools reopen and face-to-face education begins in her country, in Argentina.
This story is totally a contrast, you know. It's the conflicts and complexity of from a political angle, which is also stopping the children from going to the school. I think education is something we need to talk a lot about, and how it impacts mind of the children.
There is beautiful portraits. There is one portrait when she's standing and she have a robe on the back as a black robe, so you almost don't see her because of the amount of hair that is around her, no? But I think in this particular story, it's beautiful to see that the whole story can be seen as one picture. I think it's a beautiful story that represents a not so beautiful issue, which was the pandemic. Yeah, this story documents the growing of the Catalan business and how the politics in that country have allowed that to happen, to continue growing. No? Then you can see the problem of alcoholism and how the modern world arrived to some communities in the jungle without the time that they need.
This story portrays something that doesn't just have negative effects on the local community, but also globally, as it triggers a chain of reaction on a global level.
Each image tells a slightly different side of the same story, so the photographer was really going around the topic a lot.
From like panoramic views of massive highways being built in the middle of the jungle, and also of a kid enjoying a waterfall that seems to be kind of like one of the last natural spaces that he could survive in that area. No, this story have many layers.
Me doy cuenta de que el pueblo de mi padre es un lugar imaginario.
I am really happy that the Web Photo decided to use this open format category because it allows people to be more creative, no, in different layers. But the one in my region it was beautiful, and it's so important because it's called semillas, it's called seeds, no. But the photographer is talking about the seeds being represented in her roots with her family and the problems that the family has had in the past, and also talking about the roots of the seeds.
Las semillas guardan memoria cultural. Al migrar mi padre, ¿qué pasó con esa memoria?
The seed of the potato, a vegetable that connects her to her grandfather, and how the manipulation of DNA to create these old ancient varieties is knowledge that's being lost. There are so many layers to this narrative, and she really captured that in the open format in terms of her use of audio and video and stills and sequencing.
Creó algunas especies de papas.
This image deals with the protest movement in Myanmar as a response to the military coup d'etat that happened in February last year. When you look at the image, the people are in a very, very strong stance, the way that they position themselves, but they're holding slingshots. They're not even armed with weapons, you know, but even with the slingshot, they carry themselves with so much power.
It's in a way a classic image of protests, but at the same time the photographer is really there. He's really close to the subject, so he's taking the same risk as the protesters.
It's very important for us to remember that democracy is very fragile, and overnight things can change, like what we saw in Myanmar. I thought it was interesting when we looked at the stories from all over the world. There were so many stories about the devastation of climate change, fires in Greece, Siberia, rising temperatures. And then here you had this amazing story from Australia about a people that has learned to burn the forest as a way of controlling bushfires.
It was so well put together that you cannot even think of images in disparate ways. You look at it as a whole, and it was very well done.
One of the images is two children in the forest at dark, but they are cast with an orange glow on them, and the glow came from them setting the bark of the tree on fire to use as a light source for hunting at night. And this is such a wonderful example of how we can live with nature, because fire that is not a bad thing, but it has become a bad thing because of our mad rush for progress and technological development. We've pitted ourselves against nature.
Long-term projects provide a space for a photographer to really delve deeper into the issues that they're trying to portray, they're trying to photograph, and that's a space that's given, but it needs to also be used well.
One of the things that we were really looking for was a very, very strong edit of work from across the years, which is very difficult to do. This project looks at something that is very well known in Southeast Asia. It's a problem that's been going on for a very long time, the issue of seasonal haze that affects a lot of countries in the Southeast Asia region. The black and white project shows us in a very dramatic fashion, which is actually required because this issue is so intense and important in the region.
all of the ways in which the haze affects Indonesians and its environment.
I was looking out for photographers who had managed to use different mediums to propel their storytelling, and I was really looking forward to being surprised by it.
It takes from the 1976 protest of students at the university and the crackdown that killed a lot of people. That was erased totally, and then the photographer took the archives, was able to find the archives of that crackdown, and rebuilt a new archives in connection to protests of young people today in the same country. So it's also a way to make a bridge between generations about how people fight for democracy, human rights, and so that connection and that link is done also with highlighting a cultural symbol that is the gold thread that is used to repair broken objects that you find in the culture in Japan and that you also find in the culture of Mali on the African continent.
I think this particular edition is going to take us to totally a fresh view about lots of different kind of visual approaches and storytelling.
It's been really interesting to have these discussions around critical thinking about photography and issues that we're covering today, and how is it relevant.
It invited everybody to listen to what's happening in other parts of the world.
We had to get through so many beautiful images and beautiful works, because at that point when you have 24, it's just like, it's amazing, you know, the quality and the importance and the relevance of the topics.
It was a bunch of amazing images portraying amazing stories.
It's a great testimony to the talent that we have all around the world and from each region.
I hope the audience across the globe will be inspired by the selection of the winners.